What's up, guys? It's Chris Sarai bringing you another edition of the Car Concierge Show, the show that helps with the buying, selling, maintaining, and repairing of your vehicle. On today's show, we're going to do a sort of look back at the year of 2025 and talk about pretty much the most pressing problems that I found, doing my show here at the Car Concierge Show. And I really think that there's been a lot of problems we've had 2025. Number one being the automotive industry and all the losses they've taken, whether it be plants closing or dealerships closing or anything like that. But the most pressing problem that 2025 had was the massive amount of layoffs that they had. And of course, that is in turn with the automotive industry, but pretty much all industries have seen massive layoffs in 2025. And I read a report the other day that stated that we hadn't seen massive layoffs like this since pretty much the pandemic era. And it even laid out a number that was stating that we had lost upwards of 1.17 million jobs here in the United States over this past year. So we're just going to touch on a couple of things that I felt were really important problems that we had in 2025 that we here at the Car Concierge, touched on a lot. So, of course, we're just going to start off with the automotive industry, of course. And the automotive industry has suffered massively, over the last, not only 2025, but they were having problems in the automotive industry. Even prior to that, we always knew that there was massive problems going on that was going to have to be dealt with. And my, of course, biggest grief and what I spent a lot of time on this past year was Stellantis, and how Stellantis was truly, in my mind, just running some of the great U.S. automakers just completely into the ground. And they continue to do so to the point where, the U.S. automakers are not the top selling vehicles here in the U.S. And that in itself is a problem, because we know and understand that other countries make sure that they make their vehicles priority, to the point where other countries will deny, the U.S. and other countries that are different than them to send vehicles to them without making sure that the vehicles that they have in their country are prioritized. To the point where in most countries, the government backs the automakers. And now, mind you, U.S. backs their automakers. They pulled the U.S. automakers out of many a problem. But it's just not like those other countries who make sure that at least in their country, the vehicles that they sell are selling well. And we just don't have that unity here in the U.S., which is one of the biggest problems. So we're going to check out a quick story about Stellantis and how they keep failing us and failing the U.S. automaker, and then we're going to keep it moving.
Stellantis collapses to 96-year low as 330,000 vehicles rot on lots. Stellantis has suffered a dramatic collapse, with shares falling nearly 70% from their peak to around $9.70 by October 2025. Once positioned as one of the strongest global, faces bloated inventories, dealer unrest, and eroding consumer confidence. What initially appeared to be a temporary downturn has revealed itself as a deep strategic failure, driven by pricing overreach and flawed product decisions. Dodge sales tell the starkest story. Unit sales fell from 43,000 vehicles in Q1 2023 to just 21,731 in Q1 2024, a near 50% year-over-year decline. By early 2025, the situation worsened, with only 4,299 Charger Daytona EVs sold across North America, less than one-tenth of the sales once generated by the discontinued gas-powered Charger and Challenger. Jeep, long a pillar...
I have to say something real quick when they talk about that, because, I really think that U.S. automakers used to spend a lot of time getting input from, the consumers, getting them to do think tanks, bringing them in to do forums, just evaluating the vehicles before they put them on the road. And that charger, that electric charger, they definitely should have had some real Dodge enthusiasts check that charger out before they put it out. The whole idea that you're going to have an electric vehicle is fine. But with all of the fake noise that it makes and all this other kinds of crazy junk, it's just been failure after failure after failure when it comes to Stellantis and the decisions they're making and the vehicles that they're putting out and the price tags on the vehicles that they're putting out. And they just haven't been putting the oomph behind it, specifically in the marketing. They're not spending any specific amount of marketing money on these vehicles. And it's just one of those situations where you have to understand that Stellantis in itself is not a U.S. company, so it cares about the money part, but doesn't care about the U.S. automaker or U.S. people who are purchasing these vehicles. I mean, we've seen such a depreciation of the amount of U.S. vehicles on our roads over the last couple of years. It's ridiculous. And I myself put it strictly on the feet of Stellantis. I mean, I think they've literally, turned our U.S. automakers that they purchased into, bottom of the barrel automakers to the point where nobody's buying these vehicles. Everybody's saying what the problems on the vehicles are. And it's just not like that with other vehicles. Toyota is just top notch. And now, mind you, you could say that it could be the automaker itself. It could be how they're designing these vehicles. It could be so many things. But what I'm saying is Stellantis just did not put the effort and fortitude behind these vehicles to the point where we're buying them and they're having the ability to sell them.
Of Stellantis' strength dropped to 587,000 vehicles sold in 2024, its worst performance in a decade. Sales are down 34% from the 2018 peak, as buyers increasingly view the brand as overpriced and unreliable compared to rivals from Toyota, Honda, and Ford.
And Stellantis is one of those companies that pretty much refuses to initiate any price matching. Back in the day, you always had the thing where you could get what was called employee pricing. I think they changed the name of it, but when I was doing that type of thing, it was called employee pricing. So it allowed for these automakers to give out these vehicles or sell these vehicles to your standard American for a good price. Technically, the price that you would give to a person that worked there. But what changed is that they took that away, and they just didn't just think that they should be able to, or they didn't think that they should have to give even their employees good prices on these vehicles. The cost on these vehicles has skyrocketed. So many vehicles that they sell are over $100,000. Nobody's paying $100,000 for these cars these days. It's not one of them things that's happening.
Under former CEO Carlos Tavares, Stellantis pushed aggressive price hikes. The Jeep Wrangler, Rubicon 4-door, rose from $65,450 in 2020 to over $90,000 by 2024.
What'd I tell you?
Average transaction prices climbed to an industry-high $58,000, pricing out core customers and collapsing demand. Dealer lots are overwhelmed. Dodge inventory reached 149 days of Jeep hit 129 days, and the Grand Wagoneer ballooned to nearly 400 days by late 2025. Vehicles are sitting unsold at levels rarely seen in modern automotive history. The Charger Daytona EV has been a commercial failure. In early 2025, discontinued gas models outsold the new electric flagship, highlighting a disconnect between Stellantis' strategy and consumer demand.
That's what I'm talking about. I mean, we used to spend a lot of time as automakers gauging what the people wanted, what they thought, what they were interested in. And the simple fact that they put this vehicle out there with no engagement, no questionability to who would buy it, and then the simple fact that the gas-powered ones people literally looked at this car, drove it, and then went and bought the gas-powered one because it was so horrible and so high priced. Now, mind you, even the gas price ones, the prices have gone skyrocket. And it's just ridiculous to the point where I really feel, and I've said this so many times, and I'm going to keep saying it, I think Stellantis is trying its best to run these automakers into the ground. I think that is their objective. And people will fight me on that and say Stellantis has done great things for these automakers, but I just don't see it. I see companies, or I see a company that decided that they're going to hike up the price on these vehicles to the point where it was going to either fill their pockets or destroy the brands. And what has it done? It has destroyed the brands.
Dealers publicly criticize leadership for chasing short-term profits at the expense of sustainability. Meanwhile, persistent quality issues from electrical failures to high maintenance costs have further damaged brand equity. Persistent quality problems compounded the damage. Issues like Jeep's long-running death wobble and widespread electrical failures hurt safety perceptions and trust. Consumer Reports and J.D. Power Rankings consistently place Stellantis brands near the bottom.
How often did we, for a short time, we did a segment which was strictly about Stellantis because Stellantis was having problem after problem, week after week. So we started to do a show that was strictly about Stellantis and all the problems they were having. And it continues. I mean, it's you have to see, to some degree, how Stellantis has decided that it was going to either, like they said, chase short-term profit or run these companies into the ground, because that's what has happened. And it frustrates me. It really does. It frustrates me. I'm a big U.S. automaker guy. Most of my, no, not most, but some of my vehicles are from U.S. automakers. Of course, I have other vehicles in my fleet, but it hurts me. You know, the simple fact that the U.S. automakers, and this is what I'm talking to you guys, the simple fact that you guys decided that you were going to sell out to Stellantis is the absolute main problem that we're talking about today. And it's the main problem that the U.S. has had in several industries. Automotive in the beginning. I mean, we kept on outsourcing everything. We outsource parts. We outsource the building of these vehicles. We outsource where vehicles are coming from. And it was to outsource ownership, to get a company that is not even in the United States of America to buy your companies out. It's ridiculous. I mean, at the very least, some companies here in the U.S. should have had the opportunity to purchase these companies and not let Stellantis just take over. It's a really sad thing for me. And of course, if you've watched any of my shows, you know how much I hate Stellantis and how much they've destroyed our automotive industry. But of course, they are not the only ones. The U.S. did it. We did it to ourselves. We did it to ourselves because we became lazy at some point. We became lazy to the point where we didn't want to build our things. We're lazy. When did we become so lazy? Everything about the United States and all the problems that we're having, I really feel have been because we've decided to outsource everything. Buying Temu and Shine and, getting our cars from overseas and selling our car companies to overseas companies. We have to get back to a situation where we are reliant on ourselves and only ourselves. We have to get back to a situation where we protect and control all our industries. Because the minute that we decide that we're going to outsource all of these industries, they all not only started to fail, but they start to affect the average American because there's no jobs available. Companies can't sit around making these little things that you buy on Temu because they'll never be able to get it to you for the price that Temu gets it to you. And that has hurt us so much. If we decided that we were going to work together and, not take as much profit when it comes to certain things, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about like the Temu products are sold at some super duper low baseline price. Whereas when it comes to America and certain products, we will just skyrocket the price. We'll overinflate what our profit should be. And we have to understand that that in itself has been hurting the American people for so long. Let me change this over. Yeah, that's been hurting the American people for so long, destroying us. Matter of fact, let's finish this video out and we're going to move on to the next subject.
Jeep owners face annual maintenance costs exceeding $650, far higher than Toyota or Honda. Lower reliability ratings, reduced residual values, and higher ownership costs further undermined Stellantis' value proposition. Carlos Tavares resigned on December 1, 2024, after the board concluded his margin-first strategy ignored market realities. While it delivered record profits in 2023, it hollowed out long-term competitiveness, leaving Stellantis with eroded brands, excess inventory, and a long road to recovery.
So, I mean, when it comes to the automotive industry, we are going to suffer for a while. Because the American people decided that they don't like American vehicles anymore. We've lost so much market share when it comes to our vehicles and our vehicles on the road. Toyota is dominant because Toyota has always kept its prices, specifically maintenance and the vehicles themselves, to a decent level. That's why they're profitable. That's why they have so much of the market share. And Stellantis refused to view that. Stellantis and Carlos Tavares refused to, after they first bit some money in 2023, they was going to stick to it. But everybody else adjusted, and they didn't. They not only didn't adjust, but they raised prices. And now what do we have? We have U.S. automakers that are dying. And the UAW ain't going to help. Nobody's going to help. You're just going to let them die out. And now Trump has decided that he was going to do all these things to help the U.S. automakers, stop importing vehicles, stop importing parts, so that American people can build these things, build these vehicles, build these parts, and provide them to the American people. But that's going to be a slow process. And unfortunately for me, I think before that process is said and done, our U.S. automakers are going to be gone. All right, guys, let's keep moving. So, what I will say, the second biggest problem is, in 2025, was the softness on crime. We've seen so much softness when it comes to crimes. We've seen states that have decided that if you steal stuff under a certain amount of money, you're not going to go to jail. We've amped up criminals to the point where they are boldly running into stores, just grabbing everything they want and walking out. Not a care in the world. Daring somebody to say something to them. Because they know that they can't. And even if they did call the cops, even if the cops did come and arrest that person, they wouldn't go to jail. They'd get a ticket. One of the things that I noticed, because I'm a big fan of On Patrol Live and cop shows. One of the things I did notice that heavy drugs, meth, crack, all these heavy drugs that people use. When people are getting pulled over in some states with these heavy drugs on them, they're not even going to jail. They're getting a ticket. They're telling them that they're going to put out a warrant for them so they can be picked up later. My black ass would have went straight to jail. Would have sat in the jail for weeks and weeks and weeks. Lost everything, my job, everything. Probably a girlfriend if I had one at the time. But we've gone so soft on crime that criminals is just walking away. Drugs is just being used all out in the open. When do we get so lax on crime? When did we decide that certain crimes weren't going to get prosecuted and weren't going to get looked at and weren't going to be made sure that it was a big problem? San Francisco has the biggest problem with people breaking into cars. You know why? Because they know that if they get caught breaking into that car, they're not going to jail. They're going to still be able to be out to rob a couple more cars before they receive a warrant telling them that they have to go to jail, and that's a warrant that they can't even get picked up on. If they don't go to court on that warrant, if a cop pulls you over and you have that warrant, they're not going to arrest you. They're going to say, hey, you got this warrant. You need to go to court. If you don't go to court, they're going to issue another warrant. But you still won't get picked up. When did we become so lax on crime? When did we decide that criminals could just walk the streets and get away with pretty much everything? It's destroying everything. Small mom and pop businesses are going out because they can't keep up. If people keep stealing from them, this is profit that they're losing, and they can't get it back. This is not the major stores that can hit the insurance. Even major stores can't even hit insurance anymore, because if, depending on certain states, if the amount that was stolen is less than a certain amount, some states $750, some states $950, then they're not going to prosecute, nor are they going to be allowed to dictate it to their insurance that they got robbed. It's a horrible epidemic that we're dealing with. But let's check out a quick story about Kroger closing, or thinking about closing, because of the theft crisis that's happening right now.
Kroger, one of the largest. America's $112 billion theft crisis forces Kroger to axe 9,000 jobs as stores are closed. Kroger, one of the largest grocery chains in the U.S., has announced plans to shut 60 stores over the next 18 months, putting up to 9,000 jobs at risk. The closures reflect mounting pressure from theft, rising costs, and shifting consumer behavior, marking a major inflection point for brick-and-mortar grocery retail. Kroger cites a mix of underperforming locations, aging infrastructure, and escalating operating costs as key drivers behind the closures. Organized retail theft has become a significant factor, with U.S. retailers losing an estimated $112 billion in 2022 alone. Communities across states such as Georgia, Illinois, and Texas are expected to lose nearby grocery access. For many residents, especially seniors and low-income households, store closures mean longer travel times and fewer affordable food options, raising.
And it's excuse me, it's called a food desert, and I learned this from another podcaster. It's called a food desert, and I've realized that when I was back home recently, that where I'm from, it's become a food desert. They've closed the Walmart that you could go, that was pretty much close to, where I'm from or where I live. They closed the Kroger in that area. There was a massive Kroger that matter of fact, because there was two Krogers, and I only remember this because I was going to the Kroger, the other Kroger that was still open, to purchase some milk or something, and it's closed too. All the Krogers in my area where I'm from, Indiana, are gone. The only location that my mom and my sister and my friends have the ability to pick up groceries from is a Myers that is like 25 minutes away. So what they're doing is they're creating these food deserts, and we have to look at that it's only happening in certain areas. And where do you think those areas are? They're in those areas that are low income, have more minorities, and is not surprising, because when you have an area that is more low income and has more minorities, then you can assume that those areas are pretty much getting more thefts, because those people are at some point, or in some instances, downtrodden to the point where they but they end up stealing more, causing the problems that we're seeing now. And how could you fight this? What could you do to combat this? Because I can't really think of anything. If these companies are honestly saying that they're losing way too much money in theft and way too much money when it comes to where their location is, I can't be the one that fought them from moving or closing, because they're dealing with a problem that is cutting into their bottom line. I would like to sit here and be like, oh, well, these supermarkets need to stay open because the people in those areas need those places to buy their groceries. But I can't, because if it's an area where the people are robbing that Kroger's or Walmart blind, then they need to move for business sake. Let's keep watching.
Concerns about convenience and accessibility. Kroger has confirmed that around 9,000 store-level employees will be laid off, along with roughly 1,000 corporate workers. Although some employees may be reassigned to nearby locations, many face uncertainty, with local economies bracing for the loss of stable retail jobs. As Kroger scales back, competitors like Walmart and Aldi are positioned to gain market share. Aldi's rapid expansion and Walmart's continued store openings could absorb displaced customers, intensifying competition. The closures will ripple through Kroger's supply network, impacting suppliers, logistics providers, and food producers. Reduced orders may slow production and distribution, highlighting how major retail decisions can affect entire supply chains. The job losses extend beyond individual employees, threatening economic stability in communities where Kroger stores served as key employers. Areas with limited alternative retail options may experience compounded economic stress. Kroger's retreat underscores broader challenges facing the U.S. grocery sector, from theft and inflation to changing shopping habits. As physical stores close and competition intensifies, the future of grocery retail will depend on adaptation, policy responses, and evolving consumer preferences.
Oh, interesting stuff. So, and of course, that bleeds into our last story, but it's really sad, specifically for those places that, because it's not the people that live in those areas' fault. It is a small sector of those people who are deciding to rob these Krogers and these Walmart stores blind. It's a small sector, and it's hurting everybody. Everybody is hurting when it comes to these situations. If you have to go about your life driving 20, 30 minutes away from your home to get groceries, that becomes a problem. And it's not supposed to be like that. It wasn't like that for quite some time, and now with the advent of the ability for people to rob these places blind and not have to go to jail and have no fear of going to jail, then these places are going to get robbed blind. And it's the only true answer is for the people or the police departments or these states or these cities to continue or to get back to cracking down on crime. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about a theft crisis. And it's not Kroger's. We're talking about Walmart's closing everywhere because of this. All kinds of places are closing because of this. Walmart, Kroger's, Myers. It's a horrible epidemic that is affecting everybody, but it's mostly affecting low-income areas. And we know why. So, I don't know honestly what the fix is. You can hope that Aldi continues to grow and it decides that it is going to open up more locations in places that Kroger's has left, because the buildings are already there. The infrastructure is already there for these places to have grocery stores. And now it's just a situation of finding grocery stores or businesses like grocery stores to come in and serve those people in those areas. But they're not going to do that if they have any inclination that their places are going to get robbed blind. All right, guys, last but not least, we're going to check out a couple of quick storylines about the raising loss of employment that has been happening here, because it has been massive. I have seen stories every day. Every day there is a story about some place, some location, some peoples losing massive jobs. Every day is some factory that's closing, some factory that's laying off thousands of people. And it's a horrible epidemic that is pretty much destroying the fabric of the United States. It is. So let's check out a couple of stories about some recent layoffs and shutdowns that have happened. Then we're going to check out we're going to review a video, not the full video, but review a video talking about how many jobs have been lost this year. Let's check it out.
Alabama plant shuts after 60 years. 450 lost in state's biggest hit. A major Alabama manufacturer gave workers 60 days notice before shutting down operations after Christmas, marking the state's largest plant closure of the 2024 to 2025 period. On October 28th, the company filed federal paperwork revealing that 455 employees will lose jobs by December 27th, 2 days after the holiday. The layoffs affect 3.1% of Fort Payne's population simultaneously, an economic shock rippling through schools, businesses, and households in DeKalb County. By the 1990s, 7,000 workers ran 125 mills, producing more than half of America's socks and generating $150 million in annual payroll. Charles Cole, who led the Hosiery Association Committee, said bluntly, "CAFTA pretty much took the sock industry out of the United States." Renfro Brands announced on October 28th that it will close its
outsourcing. Another massive statement that outsourcing is destroying the American financial institution.
Fort Payne knitting and finishing plant on December 27th, resulting in the elimination of 455 jobs and the relocation of domestic manufacturing to Cleveland, Tennessee. Fort Payne workers face brutal choices: relocate 90 miles to Cleveland for priority consideration at 75 jobs, or join the unemployment line. Renfro's closure ranks as Alabama's largest plant shutdown in 2024 to 2025, surpassing Vanity Fair's Monroeville facility and Amcor's Lynette plant. Renfro acknowledged that it makes only 30% of its products domestically. 70% come from offshore facilities.
See what I mean? Now they shutting down because 70% of their stuff is offshore, which means that they're not producing anything right here. They're paying people overseas to do it. So you're not keeping the money in-house. You're not keeping the money in country.
Renfro justified the move by stating, "We constantly adjust our product mix and supply chain to serve consumers and retailers better."
Whatever.
Locklear shifted to organic cotton and natural dyes, selling premium socks for $14 to $18 per pair, while competing against big box retailers that sold bags for less.
Ain't nobody buying up $14, $18 socks. What is you talking about?
CEO Yoel Fink states, "Creating high-paying jobs matters. The answer determines whether Fort Payne becomes a diversified economy or a cautionary tale of globalization."
Yeah, that's just bogus. I'm telling you guys, this is just bogus. All these stories is bogus. And you see a constant reminder of how much we as a country has outsourced all of our work, outsourced all of our products. And I was a horrible corporate, culprit too. I really thought for a second there that I had a problem with buying stuff from Teaming, to the point where I had to delete the app from my phone because, you get caught up in the idea that you're paying such a cheap price for these products, but you have to realize that they're cheap products, and, you have to get quality stuff. And, after a couple of purchases from Temu, they come and they bad products, you realize that it's almost better to spend the extra dollar here in the United States to not only get a better product, but to keep our infrastructure running, to keep our economy running. And we just don't see that no more. We just don't care. We decided that, our country's going to run regardless of if we put our money back into it, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about spending all our money overseas. None of that money is sitting here in our country. And we have to understand that is causing the majority of the problems that we're having. The majority of the problems that we're having is people are out of work. People can't work because nobody's buying the products that their companies are making, and because they're buying the products from overseas. So overseas people are getting that money, and the people here in the United States are not. And they're losing their jobs because they're not selling the products that they used to. And that is a massive problem. It has been the most massive problem that we've had over the last couple of years. Our desire to import products and services from other countries. We have to spend the money here. Now, mind you, I understand that in some cases maybe a little bit more money, but we have to decide that if we're going to continue to build our infrastructure and to stop the bleeding of jobs, Stop the bleeding of money. Stop the bleeding of infrastructure that is not successful here in America. All right, I'm going to skip ahead. I was going to talk to y'all about some Missouri losing some factories overnight. Matter of fact, yeah, let's do that too. You got to do it because it's important.
Missouri loses 3 major factories overnight as $82 million manufacturing retreat begins. Months before anyone even noticed, Missouri's manufacturing heartland started bleeding jobs. Local economists quietly took note as unemployment reached 4.1% by July, while factories quietly shifted their production schedules. Something was brewing behind industrial doors across the Show Me state, where 282,200 manufacturing workers still punched clocks in June 2025.
And that's another thing. We have to realize that the big wigs or the corporate, the CEOs of these companies, the acting directors and such, they don't care about the little man. We have to realize that. We have to realize that the people up above, the CEOs, the guys that are above all the little guys that are working in these factories and just, making money off these people working in these factories, they don't care about you. They will sell you out. They don't care because they're going to get some big payout, big severance. They're going to be okay. It's the little man. It's the guys that are working on the factory floors. The guys who have, who rely on their checks every week. It's not the millionaires and billionaires who have already set their lives in a certain state. It's the little man who's probably working with his wife to maintain a home with some children, who is going to lose their job, and now they got to search for another job. You know how hard it is to find a job these days? We'll get to that in a second.
Manufacturing closures have been cascading across the U.S. food sector, signaling a broader retreat rather than isolated failures. High-profile shutdowns by PepsiCo, Conagra, and Post Holdings set the backdrop for Missouri's losses, showing how even legacy brands are pulling back amid rising costs and shifting demand. General Mills quietly disclosed plans to shut 3 Missouri facilities, triggering one of the state's largest recent manufacturing pullbacks. The closures, revealed through an SEC filing, marked a decisive move away from legacy production assets toward consolidation and cost control. The shutdowns threaten hundreds of jobs across St. Charles and Joplin, regions already adjusting to manufacturing volatility. For St. Charles County, one of Missouri's strongest economies, losing a major employer underscores growing fragility beneath headline job numbers. Although layoffs are months away, uncertainty is already reshaping daily life for employees. Workers face difficult decisions about retraining, relocation, or waiting out a transition with no clear guarantees about future roles within the company. General Mills is redirecting capital from physical factories toward product innovation and higher margin categories. The company is betting that fewer plants and leaner operations can free resources for future-facing brands, even as legacy capacity is shed. Roughly $82 million in restructuring charges reflect not just severance costs, but massive write-downs of industrial assets. While framed as competitiveness, the scale of the write-offs highlights how quickly manufacturing investments can lose value. The closures raise unresolved questions about whether efficiency gains can offset shrinking capacity and lost jobs. For Missouri, the challenge now is whether new industries can replace what's leaving, or if this marks another step in a longer industrial retreat.
Now, mind you, it's a good thing that these people are not going to, they have a little time to work with. They have time to get their ducks in a row, find another career, find another job, start training, going back to school, all these other things. So they're in a good place, as it were. But the fact that they're losing so many of these jobs and, the fact that the companies are stating that they are going to, try to consolidate, all that means is that some people getting fired. They're going to consolidate, which means that they're going to consolidate the people that they have, they can keep are going to go work harder, and the people that they let go are just going to be looking for jobs. I don't know, man. It's horrible. It's really horrible. I myself am very thankful that I have the job I have. I'm thankful that, some of my businesses are doing fairly well. So I'm not extremely hurting, but it's always has to be a fear in your mind that something like this could happen to you. I mean, my son lost his job the other day. So and mind you, he in his situation, it was one of those situations where he kind of knew it was coming. So I prepared him, got him over back into school. He's training for cybersecurity right now. So hopefully that will advance him in his life and he'll be okay. But a lot of people don't have me or have the resources to deal with losing their job because it's painful and it's hard. Because right now, with all the people that are losing their jobs, all those people are out there looking for the jobs, which creates a situation where it's just a lot of people competing for the job that you yourself are going to have to try for. And that in itself is a problem. I mean, we just don't have the employment growth that could overcome all of the losses that we've had. All right, guys, last but not least, we're going to check out a little thing about mass layoffs. And this is like a 30-minute video, so I'm not going to watch this whole video, but I want to jump into it for a second because, like I said, for me, this is the biggest problem of 2025, and this is a problem that we will bring into 2026 that we should have left in 2025. But let's check out this quick video about, not quick, but this video about mass layoffs, and then I'm going to let y'all get up out of here. Enjoy y'all New Year's Eve.
I've applied to over 150 jobs.
I've applied to 500 jobs this year and not heard back from any of them.
We have some pretty horrible economic news. United States layoffs are now surging to their highest point since the pandemic.
The big companies are the first wave, the medium companies are the second wave, and smaller companies are the third wave.
I worked for this company for 4 years. This just came out of nowhere.
I think there's an idea that if people are too broke to focus on anything other than just trying to survive, maybe they won't push back.
So we're right at the end of 2025, and already a lot of companies are coming out saying that in the beginning of next year, 2026, they are already projecting to do mass layoffs. And there are several big companies that are already saying this. I'm going to get into that in just a moment.
You guys, this is really scary. U.S. layoffs right now are set to surpass the Great Recession and on track to be the worst since the Great Depression. And I'm telling you, they're doing everything in their power to cover up the real jobs numbers. So what's really going on? Are we already in a depression?
Yep.
And when I went and fact checked this, it says yes. Layoffs have surpassed 1.1 million through November. So that's, we still have a month left to go. Let's see how many layoffs can we get before the end of the year. We haven't seen this level of job loss since the start of the pandemic, which was obviously a horrifying time for our country, the economy, the world. And this here is also putting a lot of the onus onto AI, that companies are attempting to adopt AI to replace human beings. And again, I'd like to ask...
I didn't even touch on that. I mean, that is with the young lady stating that, of course, they're going to have more mass layoffs in 2026, that bolsters my statement that this is not going to stop. This is just going to continue. And I'm glad this young lady brought it up. I mean, AI is going to make that massively, massively larger, because AI is going to take away so many jobs from people. I mean, it's already taken away copywriting jobs, all of the basic written situations that people would get into. AI is just dominating those fields right now. So if you was a guy that was writing something or doing something like that, you've already lost that job. And AI will continue to advance, and it will continue to take more jobs, creating more of this problem. It's just going to get worse.
Those companies, who will buy your products?
So I just got off a team's call at work. I got a meeting invite this morning called Team Update. There was about 15 people on the call. Our VP just terminated our positions. I'm feeling really upset about it. In tech right now, a lot of layoffs are happening. Who knows, maybe this is a blessing in disguise. I like my job, I enjoyed my job, but I didn't love it as much as I used to. And I know that you're not supposed to always love your job. A job is a job. A job is to make money so that you can provide for your family. And I was very fortunate to have that job and to work with all the people there and learn all the things, level up my abilities. Thursday, I didn't think today was gonna be like this.
We're not even midway through December yet, and I've had at least 4 friends call and tell me that they've lost their jobs. And then I got called for one of my jobs, and they are cutting the rate basically almost in half. One of my friends specifically I know was replaced, her position was replaced by AI. That's not even the worst part. The worst part is healthcare going up and the cost of heating going up. It's set to almost double by January.
Yeah.
And the most infuriating is this whole shrinkflation thing. The prices don't always seem to have gone up at the stores. Like, I buy a ton of Christmas candy to give to everyone during the holiday season, and I went to buy what I normally buy, and I got about half for the same price. But I buy the product, the same product, but then I open the bag and it's half of what it used to be. And if
I always talk about that because I'm a pretty routine guy. So I routinely go to the grocery store and buy specific things. Specifically for me, I always buy chocolate chip cookies. I always buy bacon. And I always buy eggs. So if there's a change in the price of chicken, bacon, or eggs, then I'm going to see it because I regularly buy those things every week. And I can honestly tell you that from, I want to say, the beginning of the year till now, my bacon has tripled in price. Now the eggs have gone down in price. I will admit that. The eggs, I think I'm paying the same price that I was paying for eggs back in the start of the year. But even my chocolate chip cookies, they went up in price. I used to pay $2.50 every week for my chocolate chip cookies. You know how much I pay for my chocolate chip cookies now? $4.56. $4.56. It's not like I'm not gonna buy it, but we can tell you that these prices are not going down. Maybe some of them, the ones that they talked about, but everything else is going up in price. So how are these people supposed to deal? You were talking about situations where people are losing their jobs and the price of everything that they buy is going up. The world is in shambles, man.
they don't do that because they can't do that, then the price goes up. So essentially, almost everything is about twice as expensive, and tons of people are not even working, and people who are maybe making way less. I think there's an idea that if people are too broke to focus on anything other than just trying to survive, maybe they won't push back. And I think anyone who thinks that is gravely mistaken.
So something that I'm realizing people who aren't currently in this job market are not understanding, that I want to spell out very plainly for you. When we say there are no jobs, we're talking about jobs in general. Like, legitimately, any kind of job. There are more job seekers than jobs. And that is not just white collar jobs. That is not just mid-management jobs. That is not just leadership level jobs. Those are jobs. When you hear someone say, I've applied to 500 jobs this year and not heard back from any of them, do you honestly think that's only 500 jobs only in their niche, at their level? I've applied to 600 jobs. There is no way in hell that there have been 600 jobs that are like director level or above for employer brand and talent marketing. No, I have been applying all over the place to anything that even remotely aligns with my experience. And not just that, I've been applying to anything. It took me, I had to go back and count. It was like 22 applications to hourly part-time retail job before I got through on anything. When people are saying they're applying to hundreds of jobs, They're talking about jobs in general. And I think this is where a lot of job seeker frustration is coming from, because people who are not in it keep coming at us with like, we'll just go apply at a restaurant. We'll just go substitute teach. We'll just go drive Uber Eats. We'll just go get a retail job. We'll just go drive a forklift. We'll just go apply to an Amazon warehouse. Like those jobs, all jobs, all jobs, all jobs, all jobs. There's not a lot of them. And just because you can go to a job board and see a bunch of things listed, those aren't real jobs. Like so much of what is out there online right now is fucking fake.
True. She's true.
Fake in a number of different ways. I did a whole video about the different types of ghost jobs that exist, but like there are so few real jobs where people are taking applications, interviewing, and then hiring a person to fill that role. And this is where, you know, a lot of us feel like we're being gaslit by the rest of you. And why we say things like, if you're not in it, just stop having an opinion. Because this is not like it used to be. This is so different. And it's so different for a number of reasons. One, yes, we have been in recessions before where there have been more people out of work than there were jobs available. That has happened before. But what hasn't happened necessarily is the proliferation of AI, because part of the reason why AI is such a problem with the job search is screening candidates who come through, and also the fact that your resume gets buried because of the number of AI chatbots that send out fake resumes.
Wow.
That is a big problem on the recruiter side. They get hundreds of applications from fake people that come through AI bots. Okay, so AI is fucking up the market. But like AI is our savior. That's one problem. Another problem is the fact that in the US, our government is refusing to acknowledge what is happening. They are refusing to release numbers, or they are fudging the numbers because they need to look successful. And so there is not the level of urgency and visibility that we used to have in recessions on the job market. And then you also have this thing of like the sheer number of fake jobs. I mean, they have done surveys, they have done studies that like something like over 40% of recruiters have said, yes, I have put out fake jobs before. For a number of reasons. They have a ton of LinkedIn, you know, or Indeed slots that they have to fill, so they just put anything out, or they need to do it to look like the company is in growth, or they're just trying to gather some kind of a talent pool without being transparent about what they're doing. This is why we feel like we're going crazy. This is why we feel like we're being gaslit. And I am just urging those of you that are not in it, stop telling everyone to do all these things that don't work anymore. Go apply to a restaurant job. Well, that restaurant job has 120 applications for that one server job, and 80 of those are people with decades of serving experience. I'm not going to get that job.
She's spitting.
And I'm not even going to, because this is already like almost 6 minutes long, I'm not going to get into like how to even sustain your life on the wages that exist right now. But
so true.
Again, job seekers, I know you're being gaslit. I know you're frustrated. I know you keep hearing baseless, unhelpful advice. I see you. I'm right there with you. We can't all just drive Uber Eats and become plumbers or nurses or waiters. I got you. We'll get through it.
The job.
Man, we're going to stop it there because she was spitting way too tough. Man, she was spitting. I mean, she touched on pretty much everything that we could think of that is causing the problems that we're having. And she definitely touched on the fact that if you are not a person that's looking for a job, you know, you can't be out there being like, oh, well, it's jobs out there. You should be able to get a job in such and such a time. I mean, we talk about how the females or women decide that, men, if they lose their job, they only have a certain amount of months to get a job before the woman will leave them. And which means that a lot of gentlemen are going to lose their relationships. And mind you, it's not uncommon for a man to lose his woman when he loses his job, because a lot of times when you lose your job, you losing money. I mean, think about it. A lot of these jobs are that you lose. They'll be paying very well, and it's going to be extremely hard for you to get another job that pays well, like any other job might have. So you're going to lose money, and just like the young lady said, you're going to have to figure out how to live with lesser wages, with lower wages, because you've lost a job that was paying you well. I've seen stories where people who lost jobs that were paying them $500,000 a year. How are you going to find another job like that? I mean, hopefully you have a skill set that demands that type of pay, but most people don't. And there's a lot of jobs out there that people are getting paid massive amounts of money that they've lost, and they didn't have a skill set. They didn't have any training. They didn't go to college. They didn't get a certification in any type, shape or form. And they just got a job because they knew somebody, or they was at the right place at the right time, and they got a job that paid well. And they lived their lives in this situation where they were getting paid well, bought houses and cars, and living with it fantastically. What if you lose that job? I remember back in my heyday when the first major closing of my life was this Otis elevator factory in Indiana. And of course, the people who in this job paid extremely well. Extremely well. The majority of the people who worked at this job, they all owned homes, probably had several cars. One guy that I worked with, he had several cars, a boat, owned a house, and was looking to buy another house. Otis Elevator Factory closed. All those people lost their jobs. That whole area in Indiana collapsed. To the point where when I saw my friend that I was just speaking about, who was married with 3 children and just thriving to the point where they were traveling everywhere and going Italy and all these other things, he was homeless, on drugs. Wife had left him, hadn't seen his kids in a year. And this is the destruction that losing a job could cause. Losing your job is one of the worst things that could happen to certain people. I've lost several jobs over the years, and I know that I've spent times when it was really bad for me, being sad, probably crying about the fact that I lost that job, and I'd spent months and months looking for a job and couldn't find one. Now, mind you, it's probably better for me because, look at me. But this is affecting everybody. Not just people like me, everybody. These closings have destroyed people, and losing your job is just going to destroy more. And what the young lady said, we're expecting more of these layoffs in 2026. So what's going to happen? What is going to happen if there's more layoffs in 2026? It's going to flood the hiring market to the point where nobody's going to be able to get a job. And most people are going to suffer. And what I truly believe, and I'm going to believe what that young lady said. I mean, think about it. Are they really playing a game with us with all of these layoffs? And like the gentleman said, it starts with the low levels and the mid levels, and the high level jobs are gone. Are they really setting us up to suffer so we don't push back on all the changes that are happening? I don't know if that's true or not. It's a bold statement. Very bold statement. But it could very well be true. So, in closing, this is the end of the year 2025. And we have to stay positive about going into 2026. We have to do everything in our power to help everybody else. That's what we are here for. God put us on this earth to help others, to your ability. I love to help people, and I know most of you people love to help people too. And this new year, a lot of people are going to need some help. So let's gather together, work together, be positive, be mindful of others, and continue to try our best to build our country back to the thriving country that it once was. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. Happy New Year's Eve. Hopefully you guys are going to chill at home. It's raining here in California, so I ain't hitting no streets. People in California can't drive in the rain, so I'm going to stay at home, enjoy the New Year's Eve festivities, enjoy my life as good as it can be, enjoy the people that I have around me, and I suggest you do the same thing. I am Chris Surratt. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Car Concierge Show. Please hit a like, a share, a subscribe. Hit me in DMs if you have any questions, and you have a Happy New Year. Peace.